So while doing research on the science of play, I came across this really interesting article by three Norwegian scholars where they argue that when kids play in a relatively risky environment, they're developing all kinds of skills that we end up using as adults almost on a day-to-day basis. They talk about how through risky play, children develop their capacity to regulate their emotions and deal with fears, how when playing, particularly with other children, they learn how to function socially more appropriately, and also how play makes them invigorated and robust health-wise. So to be even more specific, when it comes to emotional regulation, kids start to face their fears in kind of like the way that clinical psychologists expose their patients to phobias, right? Little by little, gradually, kids through their play start to handle the fear they might have with water or with heights or with the dark, right? And you can think about how this could translate very naturally to the way that adults may learn how to deal with uncertainty, ambiguity, rapid technological change, how leaders can deal with the fear of being vulnerable and not having the right answer all the time, and how Energizers can serve as the bridge to dealing with those fears through these small moments of play, just like kids do, just like these scholars talk about in this article. They also talk about how when they're socially connected through play, kids learn how to deal with rejection, right? Maybe not being included into a game, something that will eventually happen to them as adults, right? Not being hired in a particular job or not being given a higher position or salary, right? And so you see how play is the bridge, is the safety mechanism that helps us explore into the real world, just like the way that I've been describing Energizers as these tiny little experiences of dealing with things that might make us feel a little bit more uncomfortable. Unfortunately, though, play in children has plummeted. This statistic I found both hilarious and depressing, and it comes from this really fabulous book, The Anxious Generation, by Jonathan Haidt, who's a social psychologist at New York University, Stern School of Business. Fascinating book that talks about the challenges that Gen Zers in particular are facing with regards to high levels of anxiety, depression, and other emotional and psychological challenges. And one of the arguments that Jonathan makes in a very convincing fashion is that these kids are going through these challenges in part because they have stopped playing. They have stopped engaging with one another in risky ways. This statistic on the screen really shows how kids have stopped visiting hospitals with broken limbs, right? Because they've stopped climbing trees and jumping off cliffs and riding fast on their bicycles in the way that my generation and previous generations did. You can see that accident levels or visits to hospitals have actually increased with older folks, but has plummeted with the younger generations. And this is in part due to, of course, Gen Zers being the first generation that is constantly living in the digital world, a quote unquote safe world, because they're not going out into the world and taking those physical risks that we used to, but also because their parents have adopted a parenting style that is overprotective, that is coddling, that is kind of helicopter parenting, protecting their kids from all kinds of potential risks that will eventually serve as learning opportunities, just like these Norwegian scholars have mentioned. The risks have plummeted more with males than with females, but the decrease has been there in both genders. And this is also seen in the amount of time that kids spend together, right? If we think about the time that we spent together when we're young, it's mostly playing. And you can see that the age group that is the youngest in this scale is the one that has decreased the most. Very, very sad. A tremendous decrease in the amount of time that kids spend with their friends. And so all in all, we need to recover our trust in play when we're young. We need to recover our trust in play when we're adults, when we're professionals. And the way we do that is by taking these tiny little low risk, playful opportunities that we call energizers.